Hello again. We've allowed our addition to set for about 10 days. We've kept the walls hydrated for at least 7 out of those 10. Hopefully you've been doing the same, and now we're ready to start the final process, the color coat. Most people refer to the entire 3-coat system as the stucco system, when in fact the only part of this system that should be called stucco is the third and final 1/8" layer, the color coat. The other 2 coats are called plaster coats. The stucco color coat is comprised of 3 components: 1 part Portland cement, 2 parts hydrated lime, and 3 parts sand. Most sacks of stucco come in a combination of 3 sand grit sizes. The most common manufactured today for stucco is a 1620, a 2030, or 3030 grit. The smaller the sand number, the larger the grit size. Most all pre-manufactured stucco comes in a white or gray base, and depending on the color chosen from the stucco color chart, a box or bag of concentrated color is added during the mixing process to achieve that desired color. If your house has been painted over the existing stucco, you will not be able to get an exact color match with an integral colored stucco. A really good way to tell if a stucco wall has been painted or not is to spray water onto the wall. If the wall has been painted, as in the case of this project, the wall will not turn dark in color and the water will run off. If the walls have not been painted, the stucco will turn dark in color where the water was sprayed and not run off. Since this house has been painted, we will need to come up with a color that is as close to the paint color as possible. To achieve a perfect color match, you'll need to paint your new stucco. You're probably asking yourself, when is a good time to paint? I personally like to allow the fresh stucco to set for approximately 28 days before painting. This will allow ample time for the new stucco to harden. When purchasing a bag of color coat, you not only need to choose a color, but you'll need to decide what sand grit size you want to use. It will usually say on the bag what the sand grit size is. Always remember, the smaller the number, the larger the sand grit size. In the case of this room addition, we'll need to examine the existing stucco finish to decide what was used originally. If the walls have been painted, it will be somewhat difficult to decide on the sand grit size. Any style of texture can have any one of these combination of grit sizes. I realize that this will cost you a little extra money, but I would recommend purchasing a bag of each sand grit size and do some test samples to see which one matches your existing surface, and keep it in mind that the paint has covered the sand particles, which might make the sand look smaller than it really is. Another good thing to keep in mind is to decide how many coats of paint were used on your existing stucco. You may need to purchase enough paint to coat your new addition several times in order to better match the existing. If your existing house has not been painted, it can be very tricky finding an exact color match from a stucco color chart. I would suggest choosing a color that comes the closest to your original. Maybe checking the paperwork that was given to you when you purchased the house, contacting your homeowners association, your builder, or previous owner. If you don't have any luck in either of these avenues, then I would recommend a custom fog coat. Please, if your stucco has not been painted, do not paint your addition as a last resort. In my lesson on fog coating, I demonstrate how to customize a fog coat to achieve a perfect match. If you feel you are not comfortable doing this yourself, please hire a professional. Painting stucco is not and will never be recommended by anyone in the industry. Stucco needs to breathe. In my lesson on sprinkler damage repair, I explain how important this is. Okay, we've chosen a color that comes close to the existing painted stucco, and we've decided that the sand grit of the stucco is of a 2030 grit. Now we're ready to start the stucco application. This is the third and final coat and the final 1/8" application that makes up the full 7/8" stucco system. The tools we'll need for this application are a hawk, a steel trowel, green sponge float, a flat point margin trowel, gloves, and safety glasses. Please do yourself a favor. Be sure to wear safety glasses when working around stucco color coat. As I mentioned before, stucco color coat has lime in it, and the lime will burn your eyes if you should accidentally splash any into them. The lime will actually eat into your eye and you will need to flush the eye with clean water and seek medical attention, or you could have serious eye damage. The chemical reaction between the eye's tear and the lime will burn a hole into the eye the same as if you had acid splashed into your eye. Please don't cut corners when protecting your eyes. Use proper eye protection. I can't stress this enough. Before we start spreading the color coat, we're going to need to apply some concrete adhesive to the painted surface of the existing stucco, which is next to where the brown coat terminated. I would recommend brushing or rolling the adhesive approximately as far as you feel you need to overlap your color coat. This is to ensure that when we overlap the color coat onto the existing painted surface, we get a good bond. I would recommend when using a bonder that you apply it to the manufacturer's recommendations. Once that's completed, mist the brown coat with water. Be sure not to wet the area where the adhesive had been applied. We don't want to rinse off any of the adhesive. When mixing the stucco color coat, first add a few gallons of water in the mixer. Then add your color concentrate packets. Activate the mixer blades to thoroughly mix the color with the water. Then add a bag of base for each packet of color concentrate you put into the mixer. Add water as needed to bring the mix to a workable consistency. Mix it too stiff and you won't be able to spread it on the wall. On the other hand, mix it too runny and it won't spread at all. Do not, I repeat, do not place your fingers or hands beyond the mixer grill. The mixer blades will not stop turning for you and will chop off any body limb that gets within striking distance. And always remember, wear proper eye protection, please. Now that we've mixed the stucco to a workable consistency, we're going to work our way from the left to the right. I like to first spread a line across the top of the wall while trying to carefully cut in the stucco, in this case to the edge of the drip metal. This would also apply to the underside of wood eaves if that is your situation. Spread a line and then go over with your trowel while accumulating a little extra on your trowel and use the extra accumulation to cut in at the edge. Once you've gone across the entire top, look for any extra that may have gotten onto the drip edge, and with your wet green float, wipe off the excess. If you have a lot of excess on your drip edge or underside of wood eaves, wash your green float after each swipe. If you don't rinse your green float that often, you will be taking it off from one place and smearing it onto another. All right. Apply in a vertical motion starting on the left side. Spread a line starting from as low down as you can comfortably go and spread the color to where you created the first line across the top. Then trowel downward to ensure full coverage. While spreading the color coat, be sure to cover the entire surface of the brown coat. If you see any holes in the color that reveals the brown coat, you'll need to respread this area to get full coverage. Now spread another layer, this time slightly overlapping the previous layer. Continue this all the way across until you reach the other corner. Once you've reached the corner, overlap your color coat approximately 2 to 4 inches onto the existing painted surface. Wet your green float and smoothen out the inner corner of the fresh stucco. Wet your green float again and lightly wipe the edge of the stucco with an inward motion, making sure you don't completely wipe the color coat from the paint. We do this to achieve a smoother transition from the new color coat to the painted surface. Now take your trowel and try to flatten this area for an even smoother transition. This same procedure applies when doing the process over existing unpainted stucco. The only difference is you won't need an adhesive, but you will need to soak the existing color coat with water prior to overlapping your new color coat because the existing color has a lot of absorbency to it. By soaking the existing color coat with water, it will buy you a limited amount of time before it absorbs the moisture from your new color and give you a chance to use your green float with the ability to wipe the edge of the new stucco with an inward motion to create a smoother transition. Now, I want you to wet your green float and smoothen out the areas around the door and the corner areas. You may need to add a little stucco to your green float to ensure good blend and coverage. Now that we've completed the base layer, we need to start applying the new texture to match the existing texture. You'll need to examine the existing texture and try to imitate the possible strokes used originally. A seasoned professional will be able to match just about any texture, and if you feel that the color coat process is too daunting, you may want to hire a professional. I'm going to try to show you how to come as close as possible to matching what we have on the existing walls. Apply a sufficient amount of color coat onto your hawk. Swipe your trowel across the flat surface of the stucco, accumulating enough to cover roughly 75% of the face of the trowel. Once you've done that, swipe your trowel across the surface of the base coat. It doesn't matter where you start, but when you swipe your trowel across the surface, be sure not to start from a stop position. When swiping across the surface, unless the existing you are trying to match indicates that was the procedure used, it was not the case on this project. Swipe the surface of the base coat in a continuous motion, like an airplane, coming in for a landing, then taking off once again once its wheels hit the ground. This type of motion will give a better look to the new texture and a better match to the existing texture. Also, try and do this stroke in a vertical, horizontal, and diagonal direction. When taking the color coat from the hawk with your trowel, don't take it from the top or the bottom as we described in the Scratch and Brown video. This time we want to swipe the color coat with our trowel, accumulating a small amount of color onto the trowel. Now when applying the texture to the wall, unless the existing shows evidence of, you should try and not start your texture from a stop position, and this is why. You get this large area of texture at the beginning of your swipe, and the rest of the texture is smaller. Now imagine about 50 to 100 of these going left, right, up, down, and diagonally. It doesn't have that natural flowing look as it would if you didn't have that large area of texture. Now if you take your trowel and fly in like a plane coming in for a landing and then taking off right away without stopping, you get a more flowing texture throughout the entire area and throughout the entire wall when going left, right, up, down, and diagonally, giving you that more natural look. Continue this until you no longer have any color coat on your hawk. Now run your trowel over the texture to knock down any high spots going vertically, horizontally, and diagonally. Continue your texturing until you reach the other end using all that I have mentioned before. Once you reach the end where you overlap the existing painted surface, overlap your texture onto the painted area without going past where you applied the adhesive. In this area, lightly swipe your trowel over the texture to flatten in a way that appears to blend with the existing texture. This will ensure for a better transition when painted. Now that we're done with the top section, remove your scaffold and let's get started on the bottom. Lightly scrape with your margin trowel across the bottom section of our completed area to remove the ridge. This will create a better blend when spreading the bottom section. I want you to spread the bottom in the same fashion as I described for the top section. All the principles will be the same with the exception of one more element. Where we meet the joint line area with the bottom base coat, I want you to bring your trowel straight up and then straight down. Don't swipe your trowel to one side. Be sure to go straight up and straight down. Doing your application in this fashion will better join the two areas with a less of a joint line look. Once you've reached the end, let's go back and apply the texture. Again, all principles will be the same. Although, before we start, I want you to wet your green float and add a little bit more stucco to one end. Rub in the stucco at the screed area to cover any areas that may have been missed. Also, do this procedure around the door and corner areas. When swiping on the texture at the joint area, we'll need to swipe in a downward motion only. This again will better blend the two areas with less of a joint line look. Be sure to knock down the high spots with your trowel and continue with your texture. Once you're finished, go ahead and continue around the rest of the addition using all of the motion techniques I've previously shown you. Once you're done, I have one more item I want to show you. I like to first spread a line across the top of the wall while trying to carefully cut in the stucco, in this case to the edge of the drip metal. This would also apply to the underside of wood eaves if that is your situation. Apply in a vertical motion starting on the left side. Spread your line starting from as low down as you can comfortably go and spread the color to where you created the first line across the top. Then trowel downward to ensure full coverage. While spreading the color coat, be sure to cover the entire surface of the brown coat. If you see any holes in the color that reveals the brown coat, you'll need to respread this area to get full coverage. Now spread another layer, this time slightly overlapping the previous layer. Continue this all the way across until you reach the other corner. I want you to bring your trowel straight up and then straight down. Don't swipe your trowel to one side. Be sure to go straight up and straight down. I want you to bring your trowel straight up and then straight down. Don't swipe your trowel to one side. Be sure to go straight up and straight down. I want you to bring your trowel straight up and then straight down. Don't swipe your trowel to one side. Be sure to go straight up and straight down. When you reach the corner, be sure to cover the entire surface of the brown coat. Then run your trowel over the corner, moving from side to side and going up and down to create a nice corner. Rub in the stucco at the screed area to cover any areas that may have been missed. Also, do this procedure around the door and corner areas. When swiping on the texture at the joint area, we'll need to swipe in a downward motion only. This again will better blend the two areas with less of a joint line look. When you swipe your trowel across the surface, be sure not to start from a stop position. When swiping across the surface, unless the existing you are trying to match indicates that was the procedure used, it was not the case on this project. Swipe the surface of the base coat in a continuous motion, like an airplane, coming in for a landing, then taking off once again once its wheels hit the ground. This type of motion will give a better look to the new texture and a better match to the existing texture. Also, try and do this stroke in a vertical, horizontal, and diagonal direction. Be sure to knock down the high spots with your trowel and continue with your texture. When spreading the texture, only swipe lightly over the base layer. The base layer will unevenly grab some of the color when you scan over it, giving it that textured look. Remember to only scan over it. Don't push down when going over it. When spreading the texture, only swipe lightly over the base layer. The base layer will unevenly grab some of the color when you scan over it, giving it that textured look. Remember to only scan over it. Don't push down when going over it. Now that the walls are done, we'll need to color the foundation area just under the weep screed. Put a couple of shovels in a 5-gallon bucket and add about 25% water. Mix the two thoroughly. Grab a brush and dip it into the solution and start brushing the solution onto the foundation. This will bring everything color-wise together. Be sure to run your brush all the way up under as far as you can reach so that you can be sure that you're not leaving any areas of foundation. Well, that's it. We've completed a 3-coat stucco system on this edition. Doesn't it look great? I know there was a lot to absorb, and I don't expect you to know everything by viewing the video once. So I encourage you, watch it as many times as you feel comfortable until you feel secure enough to take on the task. If you still feel that all of this is beyond your capabilities, then I would highly recommend hiring a licensed professional. Now that you're armed with enough knowledge, you'll be better equipped when choosing who to award the job to when getting estimates. You'll be able to weed out who is capable for the task and who is not. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to view some of my other tutorials. See ya. A bag of color coat will cover approximately 100 square feet when applying a skip trowel type texture. Purchase the correct amount of color coat to cover your square footage, and remember it comes in two parts, a color concentrate packet and a 94-pound bag of color coat. They also come in different sand sizes. Choose a color that comes close to your existing painted walls from a Stucco color chart. When mixing the stucco color coat, first add a few gallons of water in the mixer. Then add your color concentrate packets. Activate the mixer blades to thoroughly mix the color with the water. Then add a bag of base for each packet of color concentrate you put into the mixer. Add water as needed to bring the mix to a workable consistency. Mix it too stiff and you won't be able to spread it on the wall. On the other hand, mix it too runny and it won't spread at all. Do not, I repeat, do not place your fingers or hands beyond the mixer grill. The mixer blades will not stop turning for you and will chop off any body limb that gets within striking distance. And always remember, wear proper eye protection. Apply some concrete adhesive on the painted area close to the brown coat and follow the manufacturer's recommendations. Spray the walls with water before applying the color coat. Starting at the top, apply the color coat crossways, then cut in close to the drip edge or under the eave areas depending upon your project. Clean the drip edge metal with a green float, rinsing the float after each swipe. Spread the stucco over the wall, going up, then straight down. Wet your green float and run it up and down in the corner area to smooth the stucco out in the corner. With an inward motion, swipe the stucco where it meets the existing to blend the two. Swipe your trowel over the color coat on your hawk, accumulating only a small amount of color onto your trowel. When spreading the texture, only swipe lightly over the base layer. The base layer will unevenly grab some of the color when you scan over it, giving it that textured look. Remember to only scan over it. Don't push down when going over it. In the corner, apply some texture, then knock down the high spots to blend the new texture with the old. Scrape the ridge from the previous application, then start applying the stucco on the bottom, remembering that you need to go straight up and straight down. Fill in the voids along the screed area with some stucco, and any other areas where the brown coat is exposed. With a downward motion, spread the texture over the joint line area to get a good blend in that area. When spreading the texture, only swipe lightly over the base layer. The base layer will unevenly grab some of the color when you scan over it, giving it that textured look. Remember to only scan over it. Don't push down when going over it. Mix some stucco and water in a bucket. Take a brush and cover the foundation thoroughly. This is the third and final coat that makes up the all right, cut. Now that we've complete, I'm going to try to show you how to come as close as possible to make, quit laughing. All right, we don't have many minutes left. Stop that. All right. Swipe the surface of the base coat in a continuous motion like an airplane coming in for a landing, then taking off against like the one that's up here. Again, all the principles will with the... Okay, you want to get a... Helicopter. Where is he at and why didn't he get out of here?